in my soul. Every fight out of control. Do it all to get them off their feet. Crowd is here, about to blow. Faithfully to start the show. Out the curtain, lights go up, I'm home. Whoa!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Burning Hammer Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Izzo, and to my right is your other host, Dillon O'Brien. And together we formed the Burning Hammer Podcast, the must-see pro wrestling podcast in all of wrestling media. Dillon, tell the people what we got in store for them today.
Today, on this week's episode of the Burning Hammer Podcast, we are going to be discussing American Nightmare, becoming Cody Rhodes. Adrenaline in my soul, every fight out of control. Do it all to get them off their feet. Crowd is here, about to blow. Faithfully to start the show. Out the curtain, lights go up, I'm home. Whoa! Yeah, we watched the documentary recently released this week on Peacock.
That's right.
And that is, American Nightmare, Becoming Cody Rhodes, the Cody Rhodes documentary. And we're going to discuss it today. And that's all this episode's going to be about. It's just taking an episode to discuss the documentary. And I guess to start it off, could I just get your thoughts on the documentary, Mark? What did you think of it?
Yeah, so the documentary from like a filmmaker's standpoint was very good.
Yeah.
I think there was a great mix of like actual footage and like interview footage with like talking headshots, like, and that's where it can get tough with like documentaries like that, where it may feel like they don't have enough like actual footage or they have too many interviews, that sort of thing. I think they did a really good job at balancing it, and I thought that the element of him going throughout the desert and like finding all of his old like memories and stuff, I thought that was excellent. I think that really added a lot. I was blown away with this.
Yeah.
And I'll say my first reaction after watching it was like, how the hell did this guy not win at WrestleMania 39?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've been talking about like, what if was it the right call to have him lose? It was the wrong call. I don't know how you can watch that documentary.
It's tough.
Yup, they made the right decision by having that guy lose.
Stuff. Feels like that really would have been the...
It felt like the moment.
that felt like the moment, and although it feels inevitable that Cody is going to get the moment, who knows if it'll be as big as it would have been in that moment. It's still going to be huge regardless when he does.
And I have faith in them to like help rebuild it to get it close to that point. I just don't think they can hit that point.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be really difficult to build the, I don't know, just like natural amount of over he was with the fans at that point. But who knows? Who knows? It just felt like that was the moment in the story. But like I said, I've also loved everything we've gotten with the Bloodline post WrestleMania. So, you win some and you lose some, kind of. You take what you can get. But yeah, so I feel like the best way is to maybe like go through it from the beginning, I guess, and then like get to the end.
Yeah, so it's interesting because like once I heard they were doing the documentary, I had a lot of questions about like what were they going to include with this? Like, were they going to include like all the stuff he did outside of WWE, like that sort of thing? Were they going to talk about AEW, like, because you can't really tell the Cody Rhodes story without all of that stuff? And they included a lot of really great stuff. They included a lot of footage from other companies, like New Japan and like Ring of Honor and like Impact, like that sort of thing. And so I think it, like, the way that I also didn't know it was going to be like a straight timeline through his career, which I thought was really interesting because, like, I learned a lot about Cody that I didn't necessarily know, like, going into it. And so basically it was just like his life from like when he was in high school, even a little prior, up until him losing the main event at WrestleMania 39. And I thought that was a really interesting way to go about it. And I liked how, like I said earlier, he was like going throughout the desert, sort of finding different items to help like the next, that was like an indicator of the chapter of the story. And I guess I like also just never realized like how good he was at wrestling in high school. And so I thought that was a good thing for them to highlight, because I always knew he was a wrestler in high school, but I didn't know like he went from being like so skinny and like not that great to just winning states back to back his junior and senior year in high school. And so I think they also
and
just
easily could have went D1,
yeah,
like wrestling, and just was like, college isn't for me.
yeah. Which is, it's always something that's tough to do.
It's a pretty ballsy move,
especially back then. Where like today it's like kind of like, I don't want to say common, but it's like it's more common to do now to not go the college route. But like back then it was just like you go to high school, you go to college, you graduate, you get a 9-to-5 desk job, and obviously that wasn't for him. That wasn't what he wanted to do. I didn't know he went to Hollywood, tried to act for a year, and that was like one of the worst years of his life.
Well, and that's what he mentions in the documentary too, that it's not like he went to Hollywood with the hopes of like becoming like this movie star. One of the things, part of the reason he said he went to Hollywood was because he said he thought it could make him better in the sports entertainment world and wrestling and stuff. And I found that very interesting. Whether that's just pandering or whatever. He did say that he went there with an intention of still pursuing sports entertainment one day. And then eventually, decided, he said, drove 48 hours straight back, didn't stop at all besides for gas. Just went back, talked to his dad, and said he wants to do it. He's ready to get into it. And that's when he went to OVW, started training.
And it's also crazy to think, like, how quickly he got thrown into, like, the spotlight. He went from, like, being, like, a struggling actor to, like, in 2 years, he was on WWE's main roster.
Yeah.
Like, that's absurd. Like, it doesn't matter whose son or daughter
20.
you
are. He was 21 years old.
Yeah. Like,
he was a kid.
It's absurd.
And he grew up in front of our eyes on WWE television. Like you said, like this, when this kid debuted, he had like 2 years of wrestling training. He was not ready to be on TV whatsoever. And he was only on TV because he was Dusty's son. And in no other scenario would they put Dusty, like in no other scenario would they put a wrestler like that on TV. But they did, and he was just thrown to the fire, and it kind of makes you go, no wonder it took him a while to figure some stuff out.
Yeah. Because it's also just like, it's interesting to think about where he would be without his dad's Hall of Fame induction speech, because that was the thing they really highlighted too, was like he had a really good induction speech, and then he talked about how like Vince McMahon wanted to talk to him and Bruce Pritchard wanted to talk to him and stuff, and it felt like that was the moment where they're like, yeah, we got to get this guy like on the main roster. So it's interesting to think like if like where everything like would have landed.
And Cody said he didn't want to be called up. He knew he wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And he did kind of go through the trials and tribulations of his first WWE run. And we got to Legacy, and we mentioned on Legacy, and he mentioned how big of a role Randy Orton played for him. As you would expect, knowing Cody's story and knowing the history of his character and knowing he was a part of Legacy and stuff, you would expect to hopefully Randy Orton have a decent impact on him. But one of the things that I thought was really cool that he pointed out was he was like, the idea that part of the reason it really worked with him and Randy, and obviously that was the whole theme behind Legacy, was that they were second generation, or they're maybe not second generation, but you know what I mean. They were either second or third generation superstars. They were from wrestling families. But it's interesting because coming from that, I guess you just don't really take into consideration the different way you might have to learn, just because you're trying also so hard to break out of not only a shadow, but like you're trying to differentiate yourself from this person. So you're trying to. So it's like you're wrestling. Like they mention it in the documentary. He's going out there as Cody Rhodes. So like, we want you to be Dusty Rhodes' son, but you can't be too much like Dusty Rhodes, because then they're just gonna say you're a copy of Dusty Rhodes. But you can't just not. You know what I mean? It's like, so you have to be a Rhodes, but you can't be a Rhodes, and it's like, it's weird. So Randy Orton having that second generation like experience, he did mention how that was kind of helpful, as one can imagine, and then led into, which in my point, which was this is where they fumbled, in my opinion, first go around with Cody's WWE run in the first time around in WWE, was when we had Dash and Cody Rhodes, and it was amazing. It was such a great gimmick. Dude, I used to laugh. I would laugh so hard at the vignettes when he would look at himself and he would go, "Dashing." Just the way you'd say it, you'd be like, "Dashing," and it would be like, and he would give you the grooming tips and stuff too. Yeah. Like, those were great, and he had the IC title run and brought back the classic IC title, and it's a shame that they didn't do more with that, and they didn't kind of give him more direction with the Dashing Cody Rhodes, like following the Dashing Cody Rhodes thing.
Yeah, and it's funny that because The Miz was talking about it too, about how like he would hand out brown paper bags with like holes cut out for the eyes, and like the audience would like put them on, and Miz was just like, "What are you doing? That's him saying you're ugly." Like, it's just like, it goes to show how much of like a hold he had on the audience, and I think it's probably one of those things that just doesn't really get enough credit for like how good that character was. Like, even myself, I never really realized how good that character was, and I gotta say, I did like his trunks with just the CR on them. I don't know, something about the simplicity of those, and then you had the knee pads above the boots, but not on his knees. Yeah, it was a bold move, to say the least, but it's definitely like an iconic look now. Yeah, definitely for us, because like we grew up like watching him like that, and it was nice to see like the relationship and the impact that Randy Orton had upon him. Maybe we'll get to see them do something if Randy Orton returns, potentially. That may have already happened at WrestleMania or SummerSlam. Excuse me. We are recording this prior to SummerSlam. Maybe he already came back.
That would be sweet.
Maybe he helps Cody beat Brock at SummerSlam.
Ooh.
But, and I thought they did like a really good job also at like following that when he was Stardust, and he gave Stardust like everything that he could. Like, he gave it 100%. He did everything that he could to make that character work, but just like mentally, he was not like in a very good state of mind, and he just like wasn't happy with the character. And then they just talked about like how Dusty was just like talking to him in like the same manner, where he's just like, he's never going to like hit that level as Stardust. And I think they did a really good job at like including that Dusty interview, because it
Yeah.
felt like it was just like a normal interview like everybody else too.
Yeah. So they included parts of Dusty's interview from like NXT stuff back from a while ago. And yeah, and the one thing they really harp on and they show too is that it's like how much of an avid supporter of Cody Dusty had been since the beginning. And there's literally quotes, and it's an interview from 2014 or 15 the interview is from, and it's a video of Dusty, and he's saying he's like, and I know they're just sitting there and they look at me and they're thinking that I'm just thinking that way because he's my son. And I'm like, no, like this kid he's got something. Like this is a main event star. Like it's not just because he's my son. And it's real easy to say it's not just because he's my son, but he was right. Like Dusty was right.
Yeah.
By a lot. And it's like, and when you look at it and it's like Dusty doesn't have a reason to just say that. You know what I mean? Because when he says that about people, he says it about Roman Reigns. He says it about Seth Rollins. He's saying
his
it.
NXT kids.
Yeah, his NXT kids, and they really harped on that too. They really play, and Cody really talked about how that really played it really did not do good things for his mental. The whole
that great shot
Yeah.
of him where it's like, they can be his NXT kids, but I'm his real kid.
Yeah.
From like a while ago. So yeah, I mean that's like it. And he had another after I think his first WrestleMania match, where he said he like walked and saw his dad take a picture of him, and he was just like, he said like, I was always Dusty's biggest fan, but for that one moment, Dusty was like my biggest fan.
Yeah.
Which like hit me pretty hard.
Yeah, that was oof.
Yeah, I mean, there was like a few moments throughout this that definitely hit you, that got the tears flowing in you.
Yeah, so we get to a part where it's Cody he's working as Stardust, and he's pretty frustrated with the character at this point, and he'd really like to move on from it. And they don't really want him to, and he says that his dad at one point said to him, he said, well, you should quit.
Yeah.
And he told him to, and unfortunately his dad, passed away before he was able to see, what was to come. But so his dad passed away, and then and he was still wrestling as Stardust, and he says it in the documentary. He says the last thing that he needed to do in that moment was go right back to Cody Rhodes.
Yeah.
And I agree. I totally understand that, and he agrees. And he said too. He said it would have been cheap. It would have been profiting off my father's death. It would have been weird. But we're now 9 months removed from his father's death, and he's still Stardust, and there's no plans for him not to be Stardust, and they don't seem to care what he says. I mean, this is Cody Rhodes. This is the son of the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. How long are we going to keep this fake Stardust thing going?
Yeah.
So, and then, around a year after his father's death, I believe it was, Cody Rhodes requested his release from WWE.
Yeah. And one thing, too, that I wanted to mention that I thought was odd was that we didn't get any like sit-down interviews from his brother Dustin, which
I think he works for AEW, and it's like in his contract he like can't.
Oh, word.
Yeah,
that's a shame. But yeah, so then he got his release, and then they showed like a ton of clips of him. And I believe Northeast Wrestling was the like first match that he had outside of WWE as Cody Rhodes. And I mean, what a compelling part of the story with him. Everything that he's done, he's really like the first person to wrestle for like a bunch of the big companies at the same time.
Yeah. And yeah, all these different companies trying to outbid to get Cody, and Cody says, nah, this is my rule. I'll wrestle for you, but I'm also going to wrestle for them and them and them and them and them. And Cody was the first person with the name power and stuff to really be able to say that, and companies weren't able to say no because you wanted Cody Rhodes.
Yeah.
If Cody Rhodes was going to wrestle for you, it didn't matter. You were taking that opportunity. And he went around and he really changed the way wrestlers are able to make a lot of money now. Like, wrestlers can make an extremely, really, really good living and be extremely wealthy, and they don't have to have a major contract or anything. Matt Cardona, it's like exactly what Matt Cardona is doing right now. Cardona couldn't do what he's doing if Cody didn't do what Cody did.
Yeah.
And it's really inspiring. And Cardona's in the documentary a decent amount, and he talks, and I feel like he says it. He says something. He's like, Cody kind of paved the way for what I'm doing now. Like,
yeah.
And yeah, it was just so awesome. And then they go to, bring it to Japan, and then Cody's in the Bullet Club, and it's so cool too, right? Because Cody was like the anti-Bullet Club basically at first. You know what I mean? He was a WWE guy, like trained, and so that was so cool. And then of course it leads to the birth of AEW and everything that happened there. And Cody said, "You want to talk about?" He said he couldn't get into the reason he left AEW. Couldn't really get into the details, but what do you think that may be? Any speculation on why Cody may have left AEW?
So I'll say this. I don't think it's because of like any backstage drama or issues. I just think I think they kind of screwed him when they started with the stipulation of when he lost, he can never challenge for the world title in AEW. As soon as that happened, I thought that was like super weird. Obviously we don't know whose idea that was, but I just think like it felt like he did everything that he could do in AEW, especially with like the fans turning on him. And so I think he was just like, he went outside of WWE, he bet on himself, he did all of this amazing things, like he really helped wrestling as a whole. And then he just bet on himself essentially, and I think he just like wanted to chase, like he said, he wanted to chase the first dream he ever had, which was to win the belt that his dad won but never won.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's just because he wanted to win the WWE Championship, and I think it's because he felt like he got himself to a place where he can go back to WWE and do that.
Yeah, and he does talk about that. He says he feels like he was, and it's funny now too, because he says, you go so long. He spent so long trying to distance himself from his father in wrestling, essentially, just to not be compared, not to be another version of his father. And he mentions it, and he goes, and now today we come full circle, and he's got the bleach, and Cody has the bleach blonde hair now.
Yeah.
As an ode to his father. And he talks about, he was like, it's almost like I was like running from it for so long, and now I have the bleach hair, and it's almost like I like finally deserve to like pay that ode to him. And I thought that was really cool the way he worded it.
Yeah, and I thought it was also interesting the fact that I forget where I was going with that. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about the one thing that certain someone said that another certain someone got very upset about. And that's Triple H calling AEW a secondary company. Tony Khan had some choice words for that. What are your thoughts about that? Just like that comment.
I mean, everyone needs to chill out, bro. Like, y'all can come at me. I love AEW. What do you want him to say? It's the second biggest company in the world. It's the second biggest wrestling company. It's the second biggest wrestling company.
Yeah. And it's also just like they're not on WWE's level. Like it's that simple. Like we're
Like,
both
I'm not.
AEW fans. Like I don't think it's like a negative thing. What
No,
he
I'm not
said.
even saying it. Like, they're just not as big a company. Like, I don't know
It's
what
just,
you would
it's,
like.
It's really it's that simple. Like they're just not on WWE's level, and it's just like.
And
Yeah.
we're not saying in terms of quality or anything
it's
like
just
that.
Like WWE hit a point because they've been doing it for 70 years.
That's the other thing, bro. People get like so mad, and it's like, how do you expect AEW to just come around and take over WWE, who's been the pinnacle of wrestling, the only wrestling company essentially for like 70 years. Like, just yeah, I think everybody needs to calm down. And also, it's Triple H. Of course he's gonna say that.
Yeah.
Like, chill out.
And
I don't even think he was saying it as a dig.
No. I mean, I just don't think it's like a negative thing to
I
say.
think-
Obviously WWE is the primary company.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people are like, yeah, AEW is gonna break the record with All In. Sure, but WWE's been breaking records all year.
Yeah.
Like dozens upon dozens of records. Every premium live event, they're breaking their own records. Like WWE's just getting bigger and bigger. And I'm not saying that AEW can't get that big, but it's just like WWE, they're simply
70 years behind.
They're on
like
a
that's
different
what
level. Like it's
and,
just
and that's what we're
that
saying.
simple.
It's not in terms of quality. It's in terms of like the like the level of production. Almost, it's like, yeah, like WWE has a bigger budget. Like, what do you want me? It's like a movie with a bigger budget is gonna have better special effects. Like, that's kind of just how it works.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, everyone needs to chill out about the whole secondary company comment.
Yeah, so then the one thing that I was going to say too is like once Cody Rhodes once he left WWE, he was just like, how do I honor my father without like just being a like direct ripoff of him also, which I thought was like definitely something that's true because like he wants to honor him, but he also doesn't want to be like a Dusty Rhodes 2.0. And I think he did a great job at doing that. So, and then he leaves AEW. And then there's rumors that he was working without a contract, which Brandy said were true in AEW. And then they said as soon as Vince McMahon found out, him and Bruce Pritchard flew to Cody's house in Atlanta the next day. And they were just like talking about things. And then Cody Rhodes shows up WrestleMania 39. And I thought that Corey Graves gave some great insight too about how like he also just did not know who his opponent, who Seth Rollins' opponent was gonna be until Cody's music hit.
Yeah, and I don't know if I believe that, but I think he probably had an inkling. Probably no one told him, maybe.
Yeah, but it's also like Michael Cole said that too, that he didn't know that like Pat McAfee was coming back. Obviously, very different scales, but like I don't know.
I'm saying you don't. I'm saying I feel like Corey must have known that was like there's a chance that this is about to be Cody.
Probably.
No, yeah, that's what
we knew.
That's what
Cody,
I'm saying. Like he probably knew as well as a fan.
Yeah.
That was a good chance that was going to be Cody.
Yeah.
That's all I was saying. Whatever. Regardless. Yeah, he makes his huge return at WrestleMania 38, takes on Seth Rollins and beats him. And what a return it was for Cody Rhodes that night.
That great shot.
Yeah.
Of him popping up through the Cody Vader. And then he obviously had a really good match with Seth Rollins. And it was funny because they were like talking about how the crowd was going to react to him also. Which I don't know. I thought it was funny because it just felt like we knew like everyone was gonna like love him, but it's like it's funny just to like see that they have those thoughts, like those concerns. Like you've got, I mean, and rightfully so, because he went from getting booed out of AEW stadiums into going back to WWE. Like he just left and started WWE's biggest rival since WCW. But obviously, everybody loves Cody. He's one of the biggest baby faces in the company, and he remains that way to this day. So, I mean, great feud with Seth Rollins. Obviously, he suffered that injury lifting weights, tore his pec.
Yeah.
And like everyone was talking about it when they had their like interview shots, was just like how mentally tough Cody was to do that, to go through that, to wrestle with that injury. And it was interesting because obviously the injury looked very gruesome, very painful, but he was like telling everyone that it didn't hurt that much. And then after the match, he was just like, yeah, I was just lying through my teeth. Which just like
he was like, this is so painful.
Yeah. Which is hilarious, and it also just goes to show like how much he wants it, how much he loves pro wrestling. Like,
yeah,
he was just talking about how like the people were there to see this match. Like, he was gonna have to be dead to not wrestle this match against Seth Rollins, and they also included the voice message that he sent. Which was cool.
Yeah. Where he sent a voice message to Bruce Pritchard. He was like, hey, the doctor says that I can't get it hurt any worse. So if I'd really like to wrestle, he said they were going on last. It was his first time that he had the opportunity to do that at a WWE event. He really did not want to let the fans down or let himself down, let Seth down. And he went out there and he put on the match of the year. And it was so good. And without that pec injury, maybe that isn't match of the year. Who knows? Maybe Cody doesn't win the Rumble and go on to lose in the main event of WrestleMania.
It was also interesting. It was nice to see that they talked about, because this is like the thing I remember most of the match was once Cody took his jacket off, like the air got sucked out of the arena. Like Corey Graves even like talked about it, which is like, I was interested to see if they were going to bring that up, because that was definitely something that like I really noticed when I was watching that match. And so, I mean, he ended up getting hurt. He came back at the Royal Rumble, number 30, won it, lost to Roman Reigns, WrestleMania 39.
It's pretty unfortunate that he wasn't able to finish the story there. But I think that Cody is going to finish the story at WrestleMania 40 in front of us, live and in person.
That's right.
So that would be pretty cool for me and Mark. Probably not for you guys. You guys probably won't be there, but me and Mark probably will.
Yeah. The only way we're not going to be there is if we're dead.
Yeah.
So I think that it's going to be interesting to see where they go with Cody Rhodes from here up until WrestleMania.
Totally.
Because he just got done this feud with Brock Lesnar. Again, we don't know the outcome of that match. I'm assuming Cody Rhodes won. We both predicted him to win. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just going to be on to like the next big star for him.
Could be Roman.
I don't know. Maybe it's Gunther. Maybe he goes back for Gunther.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's gonna depend on what happens in the Bloodline story too.
Yeah, maybe he goes after Solo.
Yeah, a whole bunch of stuff could happen. So,
So that's gonna wrap up.
Yeah,
the podcast.
But overall, definitely loved the Cody Rhodes documentary.
Yeah,
so beautiful. There's moments that make you want to cry. There's moments that make you want to cry of sadness and cry of happiness, and it's really, really cool, and I think it will definitely give you a better understanding of Cody Rhodes, the wrestler, Cody Rhodes, the person, and it's pretty hard to watch it and not be a fan of Cody Rhodes afterwards.
Yeah. If you are a fan of wrestling, you should watch it. If you're a fan of documentaries, you should watch it.
Yeah.
Because it's not only for wrestling fans. It appeals to everybody.
Yeah.
So definitely check it out. It's on Peacock. You should watch it now. If you're a fan of Cody Rhodes, you should have watched it already. But that's gonna wrap up another episode of the Burning Hammer Podcast. I'm Mark Izzo. This beautiful, fine-looking gentleman is Dillon O'Brien.
I am.
And this has been another episode of Oh, the Burning Hammer Podcast. We'll catch you next week.